with Ms. Hogan about the 20% cap. That's a lot. I'm sure there must be an explanation if they came upon something that wasn't in the original documents. I don't know, but the public would deserve an explanation. I just got my tax bill. My taxes are up again every quarter, and I'd like to know how my money's being spent. And I'm really afraid that the price tag on this remediation project is going to fall on the taxpayers of this town. And along with the bonding for other projects, I don't understand how the average person will be able to afford to live here. And I just have one question, also regarding a borough attorney. Are we paying 2 attorneys for a council meeting or work session? Or is it under one billing?
You're not paying either one of us.
You're here
Part
for
of our
free?
retainer.
Oh, okay.
So
But
you're
we
getting
pay
2
your
for the price of 1,
All right,
Does
that's
that
very
sound
good. But we do pay the retainer, so you are getting paid.
but only for one of us to be here. Luckily
That's-
for you, we have both.
That is wonderful. The other thing, Mr. Marinello, I repeatedly asked about the cemetery in March, in April, and even in February, and I've opened it several times. And my question is, how is the cemetery involved in the litigation? I understand that it's falling, you are, you've made the decision that it's part of litigation. My point is, I did Oprah, and I was provided with a complaint, and I don't see the cemetery listed anywhere. So my question is, I would like to know how it's involved in the litigation. Last week, you told me you already answered me. The meeting before that, you had told me the same thing. And then you gave me an explanation of, you know, that sometimes this stuff is discussed individually with council people. Sometimes some things aren't of the nature that they have to be discussed at meetings. Sometimes the borough attorney talks to the administrator talks to the council people individually, and it never has to come to a public meeting. But as a member of the public who does believe in Open Public Meetings Act, and I know you do because I've had correspondence with you for years and I've respected, you know, your knowledge of the Constitution and how you stood by it. I saved your letters to me. When I asked you not to contribute to the local thing, you gave me a wonderful letter. I thought it was really admirable. I didn't agree with it, but I thought it was really nice that you actually answered it. So my question is, how is the cemetery involved in the litigation that we have ongoing with Veterans Fields? And I know in March, Mr. Henwood, you know, you said, you know, well, you know, hasn't she asked this already? And at some point, you know, people are making accusations, isn't it liable? Well, no, it's not liable. I have a right to ask. And as a former councilwoman, I can tell you very little is considered liable on public officials. My other point is, you follow Robert's rules, and you have every right to recommend the public for speaking out and everything. We do get, you know, emotional. But the public is not supposed to address members of the public and make accusations to members of the public. Last meeting, you allowed Mr. Tansey to stand, face the public, and basically tell off Mr. Karras, Mrs. Karras. Now, I've been subject of that myself. It's not supposed to happen at a mayor and council meeting. At that point, that's when you should have said, you can take that outside. Thank you.
Anyone else in the public wish to be heard? Katie?
Yeah, well, Katie Jones, 359 Undercliff Avenue. Valerie just brought up my point. I mean, if you're gonna follow Robert's Rules of Order with the bylaws that you people passed, I think you should be consistent. And I really don't appreciate a member of the public turning around and pointing a finger at me. Now, you tried to cut my husband off and get him taken out of the meeting. You're gonna have to be consistent with every member of the public. You can't just pick and choose who you're gonna enforce rules with. Also, I sent an over request to you, Ms. O'Connor, and I CC'd Greg about 2 weeks ago. I didn't even get a reply, so I'd like a reply. I'd like to know what the status of it is, okay? I'd like to know what the status of it is. And another thing, as a member of the public, I'm held to one standard. I'm entitled to my opinion. I'm entitled to say what's on my mind. And as Valerie mentioned, those of you who serve on this council are held to a higher standard. You're also held to a higher standard when you're out on the street. So if you're going to be a public official, try to remember that all the time. And I don't want my name being brought up in any conversations that you have with people on the street to justify your behavior at a different time, okay? I'm going to make that very clear publicly, because I was informed by a police officer that any statement I make regarding anything about any incident should happen in public and on the record. So please don't use my name, and please don't make assumptions and projections about what I say about you or anyone else in this county, okay? If you have an issue with me, you know my name, you come to me and you speak to me. You don't go around town and, I don't know what you're doing, but it's not the truth. Thank you very much.
Does anyone else from the public wish to be heard? Close the meeting to the public. Do we have anything for discussion here? Joe?
Or you want me to address any of what they said?
Sure, if you'd like.
Well, the meeting on Friday was a special meeting. Notice was given. It was the appropriate notice. People maybe could not show up,
People in Jersey City.
but it was given the correct notice. And the reason was because we did not have a sufficient number of votes to pass certain matters that were on Monday's agenda, so we announced on Monday that we would be having a special meeting for it. And shortly thereafter, they set Friday at 6 o'clock. Valerie, I feel I have explained it, but if you want to wait after the meeting, I'll be happy to try to explain it again as to why the cemetery at this point in time, and it may change, but at this point in time, it is part of the discoverable material and part of the connection between the Veterans Field lawsuit and what's happening now. And that's directly as related to us by special counsel. I don't have the same handle on the lawsuit that he does, but I'm able to understand what he's telling me. So in those matters were correct. I understand there are OPA requests, which I have been reviewing with the clerk, and I believe they were answered or going to be answered within the time period. Yeah.
Anything else from the council?
Just in general, it's a question I have. The change orders or the allocation of additional monies and the number we use is 20%. I'm not sure that's it, assuming it's correct. I don't know the percentage. That's not for the original bid that's coming over and they need more money to finish things, correct? I mean, that's because there was additional testing, additional things were found, additional discovery or additional facts are being sent to special counsel if in fact, for him to determine whether that's part of what he's doing. The ground, in this case, I mean, most of the money is for ground is being taken out to be disposable in a proper location, and then the additional backfill that has to go for clean fill. So this money allocated is for expansion of the project, and really wouldn't fall, and it's a question, it really wouldn't fall into the original bid where the other guys could say, well, I could have done it for the same price, why is he getting charged something more to do the same work? Because it is additional work, right? And that's what happens on these type of projects, unfortunately. Is that generally?
Well, let me just address that. I didn't address that before. The change order that we did was, as Greg will know, harassed by me to make sure that it was in the proper form. It met the requirements. It was signed by the engineer. It was signed by the contractor. It was signed by the borough attorney as to be in the proper form. It met all regulations of the DCA, Department of Community Affairs, and all change orders over 20% do have to be noticed to the Department of Community Affairs, which will be done. The reason was because of site modifications and site problems that came up, and it would have been impractical to try to bid it. It would have held up the job, which is a proper reason to do change orders. No member likes change orders, but they have to be done depending on what they find when they're digging up something. And that's basically what happened here.
And I mean, and I'll just make one more general comment, because it's difficult, well, you know, to see all this stuff going and going and going, or we pay out there. But we've held to the original strict limits and levels that we required in round 2, if you will. And there are other solutions that DEA, nice word, so DEP will allow us to do that we've refused not to do. So, you know, we're sticking to our guns, and it's cost some money, and hopefully we'll prevail and get that back when the time comes, so.
Well, I was out there walking the field with them, and they're pretty confident in what they were doing. And, you know, in some respects, you have to trust your professionals when they move forward. And
Well, we don't have to trust them, but that's.
Well, I know,
We won't trust
but Mike,
them.
that's why I'm out there walking the field with Tom Quinton
Well,
twice a
but
week.
that's,
And I mean,
but
like
let's not make that
Right.
the safeguard. You know?
No, I understand.
We have a whole apparatus that's in place,
Right.
it should have been in place the first time, because this was before your time, so let me just say,
Right.
that is far and above any place, anywhere that's being done. So it's not just we're walking, this is being done correctly, being monitored by a DEP, all the eyes of the DEP are on us, they're on our LSRP, we're doing the letter of the law, and it's gonna cost money, and hopefully we'll prevail in the suit or the mediation before that. That's what I
And
want
like
to
I
say.
said, it will be the cleanest field on the East Coast. the way it looks like.
Tom Bambrick and Dan Latanzi from First Environment is doing their job. And that's why they come up with these couple of last things here, the unforeseens, and it's getting taken care of.
Anything else for discussion?
With regard to the open session.
Yeah. All right. Okay, well, let's go over the items for consideration at our next regular session. First, we're going to approve, will be the meeting minutes of April 20th and of the special meeting on the 24th. And the ordinance for adoption at the May 18th meeting will be ordinance number 1519, 2015, with regards to Veterans Field. You want to read this whole thing? I don't have to read that, okay. And the resolution, do you have any resolutions on the agenda? Okay, so we don't have anything on, as far as resolutions on the agenda. At this time, we're going to close the session.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah, go ahead.
we had a discussion, I had a discussion with Borough Council this morning, and this is something we're going to stay in open session on. If we don't have to, we shouldn't go to, it's too. I don't, we can talk about this, it's very preliminary, so, Attorney Marinello to say, let's talk about it. And in a nutshell, Councilman Bartonello and I were having a discussion with regard to the Old Borough Hall, with regard to discussion to the First Aid Squad. Councilman Bartonello is the liaison to the First Aid Squad, I'm the liaison to DPW, and Councilman Bartonello had an idea that I think we should explore. I think it's a great idea. If you recall, the DPW did the work for the upper floor of the North End Firehouse. It is a beautiful, beautiful facility. They did it good, they did it quick, they did it a lot less money than any contractor in the world would ever do. And that was done on borough time though. That kind of manpower resources would not be practical based on the reduced guys they have at this point on a weekly schedule. So I asked the question, following up to Councilman Bartonello's suggestion or idea to the borough attorney that, you know, we're looking at $1 million. That's the bid right now. And that's not the bid, but that's the number that the architect is saying, the engineering firm that did all the work on the outside, that's looking at the inside, is doing. We're trying not to fast track, because this project is certainly not being fast tracked, but we've had promise, and they deserve, the First Aid Squad, a suitable facility. They're not in a good spot now, and they need to be, and we owe it to them. They have to have it, and Councilman Bartonello is pushing this and pushing us, and he's right to do it. We now have, and I think he'll talk about it, and Greg got an asbestos survey, because that's the first that our DPW is not going to be touching the asbestos. That all has to be cleaned out and done, whether there's a contractor owner, whether our DPW goes in there, that has to be done first. That needs to be approved, because it's within the bonded money we have.
Right, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Within the bonded money we have to spend. I think it's around $6,000, I don't know what, because we don't talk about it. So that's the first step. And then I asked, can we bond money, instead of $1 million, or whatever it is, can we bond that, and can we come up with some sort of plan to pay the DPW, because, you know, it's got to be done in the evenings, it has to be done on weekends, because ultimately, it's probably going to be done for half the price,
Right.
better and quicker. And why not give people the opportunity to make money instead of some contractor from 4 counties over? All right, so he has said, in principle, we could do it, there's a way to do it. He's very concerned, our attorney, about labor practices and the union. So this will work to be done here. In other words, fair distribution of the work. You know, there's guys with skills that are gonna have to really be in the back end in terms of, any concrete, any carpentry, any sort of specialized skills. But the front end's gonna be a lot of labor, so there has to be a fair and equal distribution of work among the members that will be part of this group. We have to look long and hard, but we wanted to plant the seed of the idea and take it to the next level and bounce it around. Simultaneous to the best is being done, and simultaneous to the bid being put together, because they still have to have plans, they still have to have specs. They're done, they're paid for, they need to be fine-tuned, and then we need to talk about whether we can pull this off. I'm sorry, anything else you want to add?
Just to what you said, Mike, to try to utilize our own people to do any of the work that can be done, excluding certain professions, electric, plumbing, et cetera, that we'd have to. But if we could insert our own people, pay our own people, we know they work quick, they work well, and just utilize them as much as we can. Very
And
simple.
what's your estimate, like you were saying, it could probably cost about?
Oh, we don't know, that's a real, I mean,
We throw a
that's a
number
guess.
around, but we
It's a
don't
guess.
know. We don't know.
Okay.
It's
But
worth
it's
looking
worth
at.
looking at.
He did a good job of
Right, I
setting the
understand.
firehouse. He's capable of doing certain phases of this job. So if it can be done legally, I just think it might be something worth discussing. And let our people do it.
Council?
Well, what I told Mike, talked about it this morning, there's a way to do it legally. And you're paying the men, and for the time that they're working over the time that they would be normally working, you're gonna pay them overtime. And it's possible to do it. A couple of things I'd want to get in place before we do it. We need to know more about it. But certainly, if you're going to save money, and they're going to do as good a job as you think you're going to get from an outside contractor, well, it's certainly worthwhile looking at and seeing whether we can do it.
Have you seen this done before in municipalities?
Yes, there are many times DPW workers will take care of things that you could also have a contractor for. For example, in towns who have large municipal pools, and normally you have a contractor come in and open the pool. Maybe you'd have a contractor come in and cut the grass and take care of all that. Rather than giving it to an outside contractor, towns have often given it to the DPW. They pay them, you have to pay them, of course. And for the most part, the only problem I see, like I told Mike, was when you're ready to do it, I want to sit down, or someone from here sit down with the representatives of the union and make sure that they're okay with it.
So, Councilman Barton and I will kind of push up forward to the council and see where we go with that. Thank you. I'm sorry, do we need to discuss the asbestos survey? Because you've gone out there and you've hit a few people, and this guy's comprehensive, the price seems right, it's already resolved, it's funded, the bond money's there.
We based on the cost proposal and adhering to the borough purchasing guidelines as well as the state guidelines, we can certainly execute this agreement. We'll have Mr. Marinello review it prior to, and issue a purchase order for that survey to be conducted. So I don't foresee an issue with a resolution, since the amount is below the threshold that requires one.
So great, we have to resolve it again, the actual number, or just, okay.
No, if the consensus is to move forward, we certainly will. We'll move forward the information to Mr. Marinello for review.
So it's possible that may be on your agenda.
Right. It may be on the agenda for the.
I don't know anything about it,
Yeah.
but if he's telling me,
We don't know.
Well, that's the first thing we need to get done anyhow, before you move forward with
Yes.
anything
Well,
else.
that was the concern, because the initial project, and this seemed to expand, which in a positive way, I think, is that we were looking at perhaps having the Public Works Department just do demolition. And the concern was, after meeting with the architect, we wanted to make sure the material within the building was safe for our employees or whomever is hired to do the work. So This will ensure that the products such as the paint, if any asbestos is within the building, and how to remedy those.
Yeah, and I just want to make clear, the fact that we don't have any resolutions on it is because at this point, I don't know of any that I need. But you have 2 weeks before this meeting, as we said all along, and things come up, so there may be things on the agenda for that night, although I have no idea what they are at the present time.
Can I just make one more, I'm sorry. We had talked about maybe going into close because all of a sudden we realize now, based on what we find out is sort of the official academy schedule, that if we wait to go into June to move forward on at least the preliminary steps to screen, screen, look at the list for the new hires, we might miss the academy, and that's not gonna work for us. So I don't even think, do we even need to go and close and talk about that, because basically we have allotted, whether it's 2 or 3, I think we can go to close at some point and find out what that is, because we're not gonna hire these people until July 1st. But Greg made the point that there's a lot of work that needs to be done, or can be done, and needs to be done this month, if we're gonna move on in June and get these guys in, or these ladies, in July. So, what do you recommend?
Well, if you're gonna talk about hiring, that's personnel, that should be enclosed.
Well, we're not talking about hiring. In other words, I'm not trying to answer your question. I'm just saying, I think, I've said all I'm gonna say. Basically, can he begin to at least do, as the borough administrator, begin to do the preliminary things, like look at the list,
Oh, absolutely.
get some interviews set up?
That doesn't have to be authorized, that's part of his job.
That's part of the job, all right. So, I mean, do we agree that that's appropriate? I mean, and is that appropriate for us to agree?
Council, appropriate steps and measure there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of his function automatically, don't you? Don't you hire personnel here, aren't you in charge of
Well,
personnel?
we collaborate. There's a lot of collaboration. But I start the process and pass the information on.
Okay, fine.
And again, we're not doing anything. We're not hiring, we're not picking the people, we're not hiring,
So we can begin that.
Right.
In that process.
And it should just be noted that we've posted for a while now the DPW position, and we have interviews, and Tom Quinton's completed them. We have some candidates. There's skilled positions, there are concrete and carpentry required, and we'll be moving on that next month.
Is there anything else?
No,
So I don't see any reason for us to go to closed session now.
No?
I'll ask for an adjournment.
So,
Get a roll call?
Okay, Councilman Edwin?
yes.
Councilwoman Long? Yes. Councilman Montague?
Yes.
Councilman Barton?
Yes.
So, thank you for coming.